We are live here on a Friday morning. It is Friday, August 25th. Hope everyone's having a good day so far. We'll be talking all things Jets here on a Friday morning, or Friday afternoon, I should say, live stream, because it's already noon Eastern Standard Time. So hopefully everybody's enjoying their day so far. We'll be taking your questions, taking your comments, taking your calls as well. If anybody's interested in calling in, talking all things New York Jets, as the Jets get set for their preseason finale this weekend against the New York Giants at MetLife Stadium. So looking forward to that. Hopefully you come away from that game healthy. That's the biggest story, is obviously Aaron Rodgers getting the start. Again, if you guys got any questions, we'll be recapping training camp practice and the final practice number 21, which was the finale for the New York Jets training camp yesterday. So if you got any comments on that, we'll take those as well. Your calls, if anybody's interested in calling in. So all that here over the next, we'll go for about a half hour. But the biggest storyline is Aaron Rodgers playing this weekend against the New York Giants. Want to see him come away healthy. That's the biggest thing. All these games, it's the biggest thing is to come away healthy, but especially this weekend where you've got Aaron Rodgers. Get ready for week one and hopefully go out there and put together, well, hopefully this is the start of a very, very successful campaign. That's the hope and that's the goal for the New York Jets as they enter the 2023 season. So, again, just kind of starting off with my opinion on things. I went into camp and, I went into this week, I should say, not camp. I went into this week feeling pretty good about, the Jets and where they currently stand, especially with the offensive line. Obviously, you've got one more hurdle to pass, and I feel pretty good about the whole Aaron Rodgers situation. I'd be lying to you if I wasn't nervous. I am a little nervous. You've got to be a little worried, especially tomorrow. Once the game begins, there's got to be a little nervousness when it comes to making sure that Aaron Rodgers stays healthy and that he comes away healthy. But you're going to have a pretty much healthy offensive line. Now, the left tackle still concerns. I would like to see the Jets go out there and hopefully, give some tight end help to the left side. If it is, in fact, Billy Turner playing at left tackle, give him some help on the left side, put a tight end next to him, anything to keep Rodgers healthy. Look, I think he'll probably play a series or two. That's probably the expectation, is for him to play a series or two, go out there and then get comfortable, cadence, get some build chemistry with the offensive line, build chemistry with the receivers in game. Again, this isn't like Rodgers trying to learn a system. This is just Rodgers trying to get reps with the new teammates and just trying to build some in-game chemistry, because it's one thing to go out there and practice well and in training camp build chemistry and do all these things in practice. It's another thing to go out there and actually do it in a game, and that's the completely different part of this all. So hopefully he can go out there and do that and build that chemistry, and obviously, just build more trust in the receivers and stuff like that. And again, the receiver position's interesting now. And again, if you guys got any comments as you file in here to the live stream, drop them in the comments down below. Again, if if you guys any questions about that. But that's the other big story that we'll get into here, is the whole situation around this receiving core with Corey Davis retiring. And look, you hope Corey Davis, everything's okay with his family. You wish him nothing but the best moving forward. And hopefully, hopefully whatever's going on with his family or whatever the reason is he retired, hopefully his future is, you just wish him nothing but the best moving forward. That's all you can really do. And it gets interesting now with the Jets receiving core. I will tell you this. I don't think the New York Jets are in a situation where it's time to panic with the receiving core. I do still trust the receivers that we've got. Obviously, you've got Garrett Wilson, Alan Lazard, McCole Harmon, and Randall Cobb. The fifth and sixth receivers now do open up. Do Xavier Gibson and Jason Brownlee now both make the roster? Does that happen? Do you get a potential outside receiver, whether it's a Hunter Renfrow, a Devontae Adams, a Mike Evans, a Chris Godwin? Those are like the two big trades that you could potentially make, acquiring one of those guys. I don't think a massive trade's going to happen. I'll tell you why. We're less than 3 weeks out from the NFL season. As a matter of fact, we're 17 days away from the New York Jets and Buffalo Bills on Monday Night Football. I don't see a trade of the magnitude of a Garrett Wilson trade or of a Devontae Adams trade. I don't see the magnitude of that trade happening with 17 days left. When I see the trade like that happening, it's either going to be in the offseason or it's going to be at the deadline. That's when I see it. Hypothetically, if the Jets this year fall just short of the Super Bowl, let's say they get to the AFC Championship game, fall just short, Rodgers plays one more year next year, hypothetically, then you go out and trade for Devontae Adams and you go all in with Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams for one more year, and you see if you can take home a trophy. I think that's probably the thought process behind it all. I just don't see the Raiders giving up Devontae Adams or the Bucks, for that matter, too, giving up a Mike Evans before the season even starts. Now, both teams are probably not going to be any good this year. Both teams, especially the Bucks, could easily have a top 5 pick going into next year, and very well it's a very good possibility that they're going to be looking at a quarterback, whether that's a Drake May or somebody like that next season coming out of this year, coming out of the draft. That's when you make your move. It's at the deadline or next offseason. I don't think a trade that magnitude is going to happen. You can look at free agents. Sammy Watkins available. Jarvis Landry's available. There's a couple different guys available. I would not go out and get a Kenny Golladay. I would not go out and get a Julio Jones. I know there's some, I know those are 2 potential free agents, and some people have talked about bringing in one of those guys. I would not do that. I think both those guys are not any good. Kenny Golladay was a disaster in New York, and let's be honest here, Julio Jones is washed up. He's 34 years old. He's not nearly the same player he once was. So realistically, free agents, Jarvis Landry, if the Jets would be willing to go with another slot receiver, I don't know if they'd want to do that. Just because they've already got some other, Jarvis Landry primarily plays slot. They've already got some slot receivers. So I don't know if the Jets would want to do that. If they want to go out and bring in another guy who's another slot receiver, because you have guys like McCole Harmon who could play the slot. You have an Alan Lazard who could play the slot. You've obviously got Randall Cobb who can play the slot. So you've got 3 of your 4 receivers that you feel good about can all play the slot, and some of them are, Randall Cobb's primarily slot receiver. Do you want to bring in another slot guy? Or do you want to bring in a guy like a Sammy Watkins on the outside? Sammy Watkins is a guy that I've looked at just because of the fact that he played 9 games last year with Aaron Rodgers. He knows the system. If you're going to bring in a guy with 17 days left until the NFL season, until the Jets start, you're going to want to bring in a guy that knows the scheme. You're going to want to bring in a guy that knows the system. So there isn't that period of time where he's got to learn it, and he's got to have these, where he's got to learn it in 2 weeks. You want to bring in a guy that knows the system. He does that. He knows Rodgers a little bit. Again, he only played 9 games last year, 13 catches and 206 yards. So it's not like Sammy Watkins last season was Aaron Rodgers' leading receiver. But, obviously he's a guy that played 9 games. He did end up getting traded later in the year to Baltimore, who played 3 games with Baltimore. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what the Jets do here. Watkins is a guy, I just look at him again because he played with Rodgers. Landry's a veteran, another guy to look out for. So it's an interesting spot for the New York Jets for sure on how they decide to address the whole receiver spot. Whether it's in Xavier Gibson, Jason Brownlee. Again, we've gone this entire training camp talking about Xavier Gibson and Jason Brownlee, about who's going to make the roster, who isn't going to make the roster. And sure enough, there's a chance both of them make the roster if the Jets want to go that route. And I trust Joe Douglas in this situation. I think you have to, because remember last year when Breece Hall went down, the day after Breece Hall tore his ACL and was done for the year against the Broncos, he got on the phone and he made a trade for James Robinson. No, that trade did not work. Obviously, it didn't work out for a couple different reasons. The offensive line, James Robinson seemed to be dealing with a knee injury, so it never worked out. But he at least went out there and made a trade. You trust Joe Douglas to go out there, and if he really feels that this offensive need is, or this receiver spot is a real need, and he doesn't trust the guys in house, he's going to make a move, because he did that yesterday. Less than 24 hours after the Breece Hall injury, he made a trade. So you could potentially see the same situation here, where if he really feels it's a need, he's going to go out and make a move. And I think this final preseason game will be pretty telling too, just to see how the offense looks, and also to see how Jason Brownlee and Xavier Gibson look. If they both go out there and perform well, I think there's a good chance that they both could potentially just make this roster and the Jets roll with their options in-house. But then again, bringing in a veteran, more experience in Xavier Gibson, Jason Brownlee, because after all, you're going to be relying on 2 undrafted free agents. It's one thing, they're undrafted free agents for a reason. I don't want to sound negative, but they are. So it's one thing to go out there and play well in training camp. It's another thing, can you really trust 2 undrafted free agents to be the back end of your receiver rotation as your 5th and 6th guys, or is it better to go out and sign a veteran as your 3rd or 4th receiver, like a Landry or like a Sammy Watkins? So that's the big question now with the Jets, with this receiving core. But I don't get this notion. I don't believe this notion that the New York Jets receiving core is all of a sudden really bad because they don't have Corey Davis. Again, you wish Corey Davis nothing but the best moving forward. But let's be honest here. Corey Davis wasn't an all-pro. He wasn't a 5-time Pro Bowler. It's not like this guy was a top 5 receiver in the NFL. He wasn't our number 1 receiver. Like, losing Corey Davis is not going to derail the season. Yeah, he was a good leader, good veteran, good guy on the field, off the field, but he was an above average receiver. That's what Corey Davis was. And he had a tough time at times staying on the field, staying healthy. So there was many times the Jets had to go into weeks without Corey Davis. I mean, in his 2 years with the New York Jets, he missed some time. And again, I'm not trying to bash Corey Davis. I liked Corey Davis a lot. I liked the signing. He was entering the final year of his contract. I actually thought he was going to have a good year this year because he would be utilized in the role that he should be utilized, not much as a number one receiver, but there's this notion that Corey Davis is this great receiver all of a sudden. He's a good receiver. He's above average, but he's not going to make or break the season. Not going to make or break the year. He had 492 yards in 2020, 536 yards last year. Him not being here that doesn't mean that the New York Jets are going to be a non-playoff team. It's just not true. It's just not going to happen. Well, the Jets, I mean, like, just because he's not there, like, he doesn't mean that they're not going to be a playoff team, is what I should say. And he's had some really good, like, believe me, he's had some good weeks. Like, he's had some nice plays. I go back to the Vikings play last year with Mike White on 4th down. Like, that was a big play. So it happens. Like, he made some great plays. He also had some drops, but this notion that the Jets receiving core can't recover from this is just completely false. It's not like, and any team, let's be honest here, and I would agree with this, like, the Jets are one injury away from being extremely thin at the receiver position. They are one injury away, but that's any team. If any team were to lose 2 receivers, they're going to be very thin at the position. That's just the way it is. You know, if the Bengals lost 2 of their top receivers, they're going to be thin. If the Jets lost 2 receivers, they're going to be thin. Any team that's going to lose 2 of their 6 receivers or 2 of their 5 receivers, however many they hold, is going to be thin. That's not just the Jets. That's any team in general. So it's just how it is. The notion that the Jets receiving core is weak just isn't true because any team that's going to lose. So I still trust his receiving core. I wouldn't be against bringing a veteran. I think that's a smart decision, but it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how the Jets want to approach this, what Joe Douglas does, if they really trust a Jason Brownlee or Xavier Gibson. Because that's huge. If they really do trust one of those guys, and Xavier Gibson, Jason Brownlee, you can go after them. Again, a Landry or Sammy Watkins. There's names out there. I don't see a massive trade happening like a Hunter Renfrow or a Devontae Adams or somebody like that. I don't see that happening in my eyes. I just don't. I could be wrong, but less than 17 days to go into the NFL season, I just don't see the 2 teams coming to an agreement of that large. Just don't see it. If you guys got any other comments, drop them in the comments section down below. We'll go for a little bit more. Talking all things Jets, talking receivers, Jets Giants this weekend. We'll see what Rodgers can do. 2 series, I'd say 1 or 2 series. He might play more. I mean, who knows? The kind of notion that Saleh, the things that Saleh keeps mentioning, it seems like he might play a little bit more than maybe we expect, but it'll be interesting to see how the Jets utilize Rodgers this weekend. A couple run plays, couple short passes. That's my expectation. That's what I'd say you go out there and roll with, in my eyes. Couple short passes, couple runs. Get him to trust the offensive line in front of him. Get him to trust some of the weapons around him in game and walk away with their healthy, because that's the most important part. Don't do anything stupid in a meaningless game right before week 1. So that's my eyes. That's how I view it. That's how I view the Rodgers situation. Drop the link in the chat if anybody would like to call in. Again, comments are open. If anybody would like to ask any questions, go for a little bit more longer. Because another thing too with Rodgers, and this is a thing too to keep in mind as well with Rodgers is the Giants are going to be playing some of their backups. What better way to earn a spot on a roster than to go out and dominate and sack Aaron Rodgers? So what better way to do that than sacking Aaron Rodgers? So meaning the guys aren't going to let up just because it's Aaron Rodgers, especially some of the backups. So it's interesting. Well, what better way to do that than to what better way to make your impact than to sack Aaron Rodgers? And that's obviously a concern. And do you trust the Billy Turner on the left side if that's who they put out there? Do you really trust him? It's interesting. Just looking at Sammy Watkins' game log from last season. So he had one game of over 90 yards. He didn't have a very good season. Like he had 325 yards last year. 206 of those, I think, came with the Packers. But his biggest game came week 2 against the Bears, where they won 27-10. That was his biggest game. He had 3 catches for 93 yards. He had a 55 catch. That was the longest catch of the year. So that was Watkins' his numbers last season. Or those were Watkins' numbers last year. 16 catches, 27 targets, 325 yards overall. He didn't score a touchdown last season despite playing in 12 games. Did not find the back of the end zone with either Green Bay or the 3 games he played with Baltimore. So that is something interesting. He obviously spent 4 years in Buffalo, spent a year in LA, spent 3 seasons with Kansas City, LA meaning the Rams. Spent 2021 with the Ravens, spent the first part of last year with the Packers, and then spent the final couple games, 3 games with the Ravens, including 1 game in the postseason with the Ravens, obviously, and he's still a free agent. And so is Landry. 2 guys that have both spent time in the AFC East. Funny because Watkins was a former first overall pick, so if that means anything to you, Jarvis Landry, former second overall pick, not that that matters, but Landry does have more of the – Landry would be the bigger name if the Jets would to go out and sign somebody. Landry would be the bigger name of the two. Landry's been a 1,000-yard receiver 3 times in NFL career. Watkins was only once, and that was in his second year. Landry's got obviously a pretty good background in terms of the NFL success. Pro Bowler a couple times, All-Pro. Spent 4 years in Miami, 4 years in Cleveland, and then obviously last year with the Saints, where he only played 9 games at 272 yards on 25 catches, and he had a touchdown. But a guy with a track record for sure, a track record and a successful track record for Jarvis Landry, where he's definitely had some success in the NFL. As I mentioned, Pro Bowl appearances a couple times. He'd be the bigger name, 5-time Pro Bowler from 2015 to 2019. So he's had a lot of success. Not the same player he once was. Jets would be willing to bring in another slot guy. They can go out and do that with Landry. You wonder if the Jets, you go back to the whole Odell stuff, hindsight 2020. If Odell was here, it'd make things a little bit more easier for the Jets in terms, and I'm not saying I was all in on Odell because I wasn't. I'm not a huge Odell guy, but you look back on it, Odell could have been a solid piece for them right now, because you wouldn't have to really worry about going out and getting another veteran. And I'd say Odell has still got a lot left in the tank, more than Watkins and Landry. So that's how I see it. But hopefully you see Rodgers I don't know. I think he might play a quarter tomorrow. We'll see. And then Zach the rest of the way, at least until a decent amount of time. And then hopefully Boyle. Or hopefully Zach plays the whole game, and then Tim Boyle. I don't want to see much of Tim Boyle at all. I don't want to see Tim Boyle at all. I really don't. I don't know what more we need to see from Tim Boyle to know that he's not a very good quarterback. He's not a good quarterback at all. He's horrible, and I wouldn't be shocked if he doesn't make the team. I just don't think he will, unless I know they have the whole emergency quarterback thing, but. It's just he's not any good. I understand he's close to Rodgers and all that stuff, but it's just he's not going to get picked up anywhere. You could easily stash him on the practice squad. So that's how I see it. If you guys got any other questions, drop them in the comments. We'll go for a couple more minutes, close things out for the day. Have a recap up on my In the Trench with Gang Green podcast tomorrow. Have my preview up there today as well. So stay tuned for that. So have more content there. Jets and Giants both open up. Obviously, primetime. Giants will be on Sunday night. By the way, this game's tomorrow, 6 Eastern. Jets it's funny. If you're going to bet on the game, this is the Jets. These are the odds. So the Jets are 6-point favorites, over under set at 39. So that's the odds for tomorrow. for the final preseason game. The final preseason game is just always the most nerve-wracking, I feel like, because you're the closest to week 1. and you just like you've gone all this way staying healthy. Just the final preseason games like the last step to staying healthy and getting ready for week 1. So it's the biggest thing. All right, so that'll probably close out the live stream. Went for about 20 and a half minutes here. Again, I'll have preview up later on my In the Trench with Gang Green podcast on Apple Podcasts, so stay tuned for that. On this channel, I'll have content up next week, more content up next week, Monday through Friday. I'll start my divisional stuff, or divisional predictions there. So we'll have that and much more. So thank you all for stopping by. As always, hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.